Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a marble hall echoing with sandal scuffs and the soft shuffle of starched linen. The air is dry and drowsy. You're sitting on a cold stone bench in the Roman Senate, yes, that Senate, the very one where powerful men debate empire, taxes, and whose cousin offended whose uncle during Saturnalia. Around you, the room hums with boredom masked as solemn duty. There's incense clinging faintly to the walls, but it doesn't hide the underlying note of old feet and overripe figs. The sunlight streaming through the open oculus overhead moves lazily across the floor, as if it, too, is trying to leave early. You can already tell, you probably won't survive this without zoning out at least twice. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from, and what time is it for you? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge into the Curia Julia, feeling the weight of your toga more than usual today. Honestly, why didn't they make these things with pockets? Your seat is hard, unforgiving marble, and not nearly wide enough for the luxurious recline you crave. Senators are already assembling, the early birds who want to be seen being engaged. You know the type, the speaker rises, it's Marcus from Subura. Again, and you brace for impact. His speeches are legendary in one way only, their length. Not their content. You tune in for a few seconds, something about road maintenance in Ostia, and then, your eyes blur. Survival mode initiates, you glance down the row. One senator has shifted in his seat 5 times in the last 2 minutes, pulling at the edge of his toga like it might transform into a parachute. Another scratches behind his ear repeatedly, which seems to be code for please someone interrupt him. The benches are carved from smooth travertine, and they don't get softer with time. Some historians argue whether the discomfort was intentional, to keep everyone alert, or just an afterthought in a room designed more for grandeur than ergonomics. Either way, your gluteus maximus files an official complaint. To your left, someone's sandals squeak. Not walk squeak, just constant little fidgety twitches. A nervous tick. Or a rebellion against sleep, the speech drones on. Marcus references a series of scrolls no one asked for. His voice is monotone with just a dash of nasal, a combination proven in modern labs to increase drowsiness by 38%. You start counting the decorative columns. 12. 13. 14. Wait, was that the same one twice? You try again. Senators in the back row are already nodding along like synchronized swimmers trying to stay awake without being rude. One of them actually has his eyes closed but keeps his chin moving like he's chewing invisible gum. Outside, a bird screeches. You imagine it saying, still talking. And still, Marcus talks. You notice the room has zero airflow. Roman architecture was great for echoing thunderous applause, but not great at subtle comforts like oxygen. Maybe that's why you're already feeling lightheaded. It's fascinating. Historians still argue whether attendance in these sessions was more symbolic than functional. Some say real decisions happened elsewhere, over private dinners or in back gardens with wine and olives. This was just the pageantry. A sort of ancient version of attending a meeting that could have been a scroll. You shift your feet and accidentally kick the senator in front of you. He doesn't even turn around. He's too focused on slowly, dramatically unrolling a scroll. Upside down, you breathe in, and realize the incense is stronger now. Someone probably just walked in wearing 3 pounds of frankincense oil. Either that, or the wall is sweating perfume. Your eyes drift to the mosaics, tiny bits of stone arranged into scenes you've stared at 100 times. A boar hunt. A naval battle. A man holding what might be a really large spoon. Hard to say. They're all more interesting than the current debate about how many denarii should go toward fixing a statue's missing nose. You feel it again, that familiar pull of sleep, of dreaming while awake. You resist. Just barely, and yet, despite everything, the marble, the sandals, the droning, there's a strange comfort in the ritual of it all. The rhythm of the speeches, the murmur of restlessness, the constant human need to look busy when bored. You're part of something ancient, tedious, but somehow soothing in its own dry, bureaucratic way. The senator next to you starts cleaning his ring with the hem of his sleeve. You look down and realize you've been scratching a doodle into the bench with your fingernail. It looks like a sad dolphin. Possibly a loaf of bread. Either way, you feel oddly proud. Still, Marcus speaks. About road stones, weather damage, and the appropriate color of ceremonial ribbons for the opening of a new aqueduct. And you're hanging in there. Barely. Your toga itches, you tug at the fold near your waist, trying to discreetly reposition it without drawing attention, but it's hopeless. The wool rubs in all the wrong places. Across the hall, someone's already half swallowed by their own fabric, reclining into a slump that would make a lounge chair jealous. And you're too stiff from section 1's bench to even pretend to be comfortable. You shift again and discover, miracle of miracles, a small fig tucked into the fold near your knee. You honestly forgot you stashed that there. It's squishy now, probably from heat and leg pressure, but you consider eating it anyway. Senators aren't above pocket snacking, and you're not above joining them. See, togas weren't just status symbols, they were mobile pantries. Some senators hid dried fruit, nuts, or even soft cheese tucked deep in the layers. You glance down the row and notice one older man delicately pinching a date from his inner toga like he's picking lint. His mouth barely moves as he chews. Professional, historians still argue whether bringing snacks into sessions was frowned upon or simply tolerated. No written law forbids a discreet prune nibble mid-debate. Maybe the gods were fine with it, as long as you didn't crunch too loud. There's a muffled clink 2 seats to your right. Someone's unrolling a linen napkin with a kind of ceremonial reverence. Inside, 3 olives and a tiny piece of honey cake. You know this because the man next to you is leaning over, not so subtly watching, possibly calculating a trade. You resist the urge to ask for a bite. The speaker, Marcus, still talking, is now referencing temple columns. You've lost the thread entirely. Something about bird droppings and sacred marble. Your stomach growls softly, responding to the fig now smushed near your shin. To distract yourself, you begin folding your napkin. Slowly, with exaggerated care. The linen is thick, a luxury type, not yours, probably pilfered from a banquet. You fold one corner, then another, and before you realize it, you've made a sort of pyramid. Not impressive. Not functional. But satisfying. Someone notices. A man across from you, Lucius, you think, raises an eyebrow and begins folding his own napkin. The senator next to him sees the movement and, like a row of dominoes, the quiet game of napkin origami has begun. It spreads. There's a brief moment of silent coordination, heads down, linen fluttering. No one speaks. It's like an unspoken agreement. If we must endure this speech, we will at least express ourselves in triangle birds and abstract napkin beetles. A senator near the back creates what can only be described as a woolen shrimp. You suppress a laugh. Barely, this, more than anything, is how Roman senators passed the time. They didn't just listen. They endured. They invented microgames. Ritualized distractions. Fidget therapy with a toga. You pull your sleeves tighter and consider the next napkin form. A dolphin? Too ambitious. Maybe a pyramid again, but this time with flair. But just then, Marcus takes a sudden pause. Heads lift. A collective breath. Could this be it? Nope. He adjusts his scroll, clears his throat dramatically, and pivots, now onto grain shipments from Sicily. The napkin folding resumes, intensified by disappointment. You lean your head slightly and notice something else, a small pouch, barely visible, tied to the inside edge of a senator's belt cord. It jingles faintly. You suspect candied nuts. Or dice. Or both. It's not just food. These guys came prepared like modern students sneaking snacks and gadgets into a long lecture. Tiny diversions tucked into respectable folds. One senator, young, clearly still learning the craft of boredom survival, drops a figure. It hits the stone floor with a soft thunk. Heads turn. He freezes. Someone coughs pointedly. The fig is kicked beneath a bench with a swift sandal nudge. Etiquette in the Senate was a strange mix of performance and passive rebellion. You couldn't storm out. You couldn't shout, "This is so boring." But you could chew quietly. You could hide snacks. You could mime interest while planning lunch, and you do exactly that. You think of the food stalls near the Tiber, the ones with fresh flatbread and that sweet mustardy fish sauce that makes your nose itch. You almost drool. Almost, but instead, you reach inside your toga and retrieve the smushed figure. It's slightly warm, slightly wrong, but you eat it anyway. It tastes like sleep and patience. You chew slowly. With reverence. This is your rebellion. A whisper floats by, someone mentioning a secret bakery that just opened near the Aventine. You file that away for later. Senators might be masters of debate, but they're even better at mapping out dessert. There's another long pause in the speech. A rhetorical device? Or just Marcus catching his breath? Historians still debate whether such pauses were calculated or genuine senior moments. Either way, you take the opportunity to adjust your toga again. The fabric bunches weirdly around your hip. You reach in, find something sharp. A toothpick? No, a chicken bone. You don't remember eating chicken. You toss it under the bench with zero remorse. This place is practically a museum of secret snacking, and as Marcus meanders into yet another tax metaphor involving olive presses, you settle into a sleepy rhythm. Fold. Chew. Shift. Glance. Repeat. Around you, the napkin beasts grow stranger. A senator near the front has managed what appears to be a goose, possibly a duck. Someone else made what could be a snake or a sandal. At this point, nobody cares. It's the spirit that counts, and you lean back, satisfied with your crumpled pile of linen and fig smudge. You've survived another 10 minutes. Maybe 20, only. Hours to go. You stretch your legs subtly, well, as subtly as one can stretch when encased in layers of itchy wool, stuck on a narrow marble bench, and surrounded by peers who've all perfected the art of pretending they're still paying attention. Marcus is, against all odds, still speaking. He's comparing tax reform to temple construction now, which, credit where it's due, is at least creative. You blink slowly and let your eyes wander. You need something, anything, to stay awake. That's when you see it, faint etchings in the stone below your seat. Not decorative carvings. Not official inscriptions. These are scratches, lines, loops, tiny animal shapes, drawn with idle fingers, likely during some previous senator's 1,000-year speech on sewer maintenance. You squint and shift to get a better look. There's a rough fish shape, what looks like a crescent moon, and maybe, just maybe, a caricature of someone with exaggerated nose and eyes. You glance at the senator to your left. Same nose. Could be coincidence. Could be ancient shade. Turns out, Roman senators were just as restless as you, and just as human. Graffiti wasn't just for tavern walls and public baths. It seeped into the sacred spaces of governance too, albeit more sneakily. Historians still argue whether some of these carvings were actual protest or just bored doodles. Either way, they're here, quietly rebelling in stone. You tap your sandal gently against the floor, then slide your hand across the bench. More etchings. A looping line you swear looks like a stylized snail. Maybe an early draft of a senator's family crest. Or just someone really into mollusks. There's a particularly bold one near the edge of the bench, two stick figures, one with an absurdly large toga and one holding a scroll like a sword. A tiny inscription beneath it reads, in rough Latin, Fabius talks like rain, constant, cold, and no end. You almost laugh aloud. That's exactly how Marcus feels right now, like an eternal drizzle of words. You glance behind you, pretending to scratch your neck, and catch another senator idly tracing his finger over a groove in the bench. His lips twitch upward. He's found something amusing. Probably another accidental political cartoon. The marble benches have become ancient notebooks, filled with the quiet sighs of centuries. Some carvings are basic, shapes, animals, initials. But others show a surprising level of detail. You spot a lion with cross-hatched mane. Next to it, a donkey with what looks like a scroll tied to its back. Was it a commentary on politics? Or just an early attempt at satire? Senators had time. Lots of it. And with no smartphones, no fidget spinners, and no escape without looking rude, the only tool they had was their stylus, or, in many cases, just a spare ring or fingernail. Art happened. Out of boredom, yes, but also out of need. You start tracing your own tiny mark, nothing big. Nothing ambitious. Just a squiggly line that may become a lizard. Or a leaf. Or a confused eel. You're not sure. It feels nice to do something that isn't pretending to care about marble tariffs. Across the way, someone coughs loudly. You look up, startled. Marcus is winding down. He's used the word finally, but no one believes him. You've been burned before, and while you half listen to his fifth concluding metaphor, your hand drifts again to the stone, and you add another little mark. It's relaxing, oddly meditative. You wonder if hundreds of years from now, someone else will see your doodle and wonder about you. One senator near the front, not known for his subtlety, actually pulls out a wax tablet and begins taking notes. It's a bold move, because he's clearly just sketching. You see the flick of his stylus, the rhythm too smooth for real note-taking. Maybe a bored doodler like yourself. Maybe better, historians have found scratched-in graffiti even on the backs of official Senate seats, little phrases like Berelius speaks too slow and wake me for the vote. There's still a debate over whether these were the ancient version of sarcasm or just genuine, desperate cries for help, but the existence of graffiti in such a prestigious place makes one thing clear: no one was immune to the drag of long speeches. Not even Rome's best. You glance again at your doodle. It's evolved, maybe now a sleeping snake wrapped around a fig. It's abstract. Interpretive. You like it. The sun shifts overhead, casting a warmer light across the floor. Dust dances lazily in the beam. The room hums, not with attention, but with shared, silent exhaustion. You feel connected to everyone here, not by politics or policy, but by mutual boredom and low-grade mischief. Someone a few rows back lets out a dramatic yawn. It echoes. No one scolds him. In fact, 3 others yawn immediately after, as if on cue. A yawning epidemic. It's beautiful. You tilt your head back and rest it against the cold stone wall behind you. It feels amazing. Like the first sip of cold water on a hot day. You imagine carving a full mural into that wall someday, your life's boredom. Immortalized in limestone, the graffiti continues. Not loudly, not boldly. Just the occasional scratch, whisper of a stylus, quiet mutter of almost done that no one believes, and finally, Marcus folds his scroll. A polite murmur runs through the room. No applause, obviously. That would be undignified. But the relief is palpable, as you rise to your feet, your leg half asleep, your toga slightly fig-stained, you take one last look at your tiny doodle. A whisper of rebellion. A sigh carved in stone, and then you shuffle out behind the others, already bracing for whoever's next to speak. And already thinking about what you might draw next. You shuffle along the curved marble aisle, your sandals whispering against the stone, when a wave of cool air hits you, a draft drifting in from the colonnade outside. For a split second, you consider stepping out, pretending to tie your sandal, then just keeping going. Maybe disappear into a quiet courtyard and stare at a fig tree until your will to live returns, but no. You're a senator. There are expectations. There is protocol, and anyway, if you leave now, you'll miss the best part, the seating shuffle, as the next speaker, Decimus, poor soul, steps forward with his scroll, a subtle migration begins. Senators inch left, right, closer to the shade, farther from the echo. Maybe nearer to a buddy who's known for sneaking in wine disguised as diluted vinegar. You pick your next bench with care. It's the equivalent of choosing a seat in a university lecture where the professor doesn't take attendance. You end up next to a man you've seen a dozen times but never spoken to. He nods once. You nod back. Then both of you glance at the central podium, sigh internally, and return to the ancient tradition of surviving by proximity, this section of seating. It's slightly better. The marble has a crack running through it, just enough to give your backside something to grip. You're not proud of how thrilled that makes you. Seating in the Senate wasn't random. The most senior senators, old, respected, and often very flatulent, got the central, visible benches. Everyone else jockeyed for the sweet spots, near exits, under shade, or beside those rare senators who knew how to whisper funny commentary without getting caught. The Senate wasn't just a governing body. It was a seating chart from hell, and the politics of where you sat. Intense. Historians still argue whether seating proximity to powerful figures influenced voting outcomes or if it was just senators trying to stay warm in winter by sitting next to large men. Your new neighbor, long nose, broad shoulders, one sandal slightly too small, leans over. Did he just compare tax fraud to shipwrecks? He whispers. You nod. With extended boat metaphors, you reply, you bond instantly. This is how alliances formed, not in backroom deals, but in quiet jokes whispered during truly abysmal speeches. Mutual boredom made better friends than ambition ever could. The Senate, at its heart, was a drama, seating included. Senators would arrive early just to claim a good spot, only to be shifted later when someone more important showed up. You'd sit, be asked to scoot over, then scoot again. And again. You were the human version of a bookmark, constantly moved but rarely read. You scan the chamber. There's Gaius, the one with the loudest nose breathing in Rome, sitting exactly where he always does. In the second row, third from the left. No one sits beside him. They've learned. He's like a breathing monument. On the other end, two young senators have positioned themselves next to the ventilation grate. A smart move. The occasional breeze lifts their hair like it's divine intervention. You consider moving there, but it would look suspicious now. You'd have to fake a cough or a sudden need for cooler air for your constitution. Too much effort. Your current benchmate pulls something from his belt pouch, a small piece of wax, shaped into a smiley face. He presses it onto the bench between you. You smile. It feels like a secret message in a bottle. You both glance up as Decimus finally begins. His voice is slow, gravelly, and... oh no. He's reading poetry. You shift again, and then, blessedly, a pigeon flaps into the chamber. No one looks up. This happens more than you'd expect. The bird perches on a column, preens, and then does exactly what pigeons do. It stares blankly and looks deeply unimpressed with Roman politics. A few senators watch it for a solid minute, mentally escaping the chamber by imagining life as a carefree, seed-snacking sky rat. Then, movement. A man on the far side of the room begins the classic lean and slide. He fakes a yawn, turns toward the edge of the bench, and casually edges toward a more desirable seat. It's a high-risk maneuver. If you move too boldly, you'll draw attention. If you're too slow, someone else takes the spot. Another senator, leaning back like a relaxed tortoise, throws him a look. It says, "Don't even try." The tension is thick. For a moment, you think a shuffle standoff is about to erupt, then the pigeon coos loudly, and everyone remembers their shared mortality. You and your benchmate both sigh. He whispers, 1 hour in, 3 more to go. You nod like two prisoners counting hash marks on a cell wall. The politics of seating didn't end when you sat down. You had to hold the seat. Defend it. Justify it with the right level of attentiveness. Fall asleep, and you might lose your spot to someone who pretends to care harder. You once saw a senator construct a fake scroll fortress around himself, 3 or 4 scrolls stacked vertically like a barrier. He'd nod solemnly every few minutes, eyes closed behind the paper. No one called him out. It was brilliant. You try something similar, using your toga folds. Not quite as stealthy, but it blocks your left side peripheral vision. The side Decimus is on. Now you can just stare forward into the middle distance and let your brain melt gently, like cheese on a sunlit windowsill. Your bench creaks as someone behind you shifts, and you realize you've been leaning a little too far to one side. You correct, only to notice your neighbor has drifted off with his eyes open. Impressive. Disturbing. Enviable. A senator stifles a sneeze in the back row. It echoes. Decimus pauses but soldiers on. His poem is about rivers and taxes. You hope a river carries you far away from here. As the hour drips onward, the benches creak, the pigeon poops. On the senior bench, a glorious act of silent protest, and the politics of position shift once again. Someone leaves, someone arrives, someone reclaims an old seat like a returning general, and through it all, you remain perched on your slightly cracked stone slab, toga bunched, knees stiff, mind somewhere between sleep and satire. Not all battles are fought with swords. Some are fought with shuffling butts and patient sighs. Your knee has begun whispering threats. A tiny ache that pulses in time with Decimus's droning. It's the sort of discomfort that makes you wonder if this particular marble bench was designed by someone who hated senators, possibly a sculptor who once sat through one too many grain price debates. Still, you remain. Partly out of duty, mostly out of inertia. But also because something is happening. It's subtle at first. You notice it in the way the senators nearby are shifting, not the usual restless fidgeting, but synchronized motion, like birds aligning before a long flight. You glance at your benchmate. He's already untucking something from under his tunic, a game, not an official one. Obviously. Rome would never condone such levity in its sacred political theater. But that's the beauty of it. These little games, crafted for secrecy and survival, are passed down senator to senator like family heirlooms. This one's called Tessera Tactica, or Token Tactics. It uses wax seals, scraps of scrolls, and whatever detritus a senator might reasonably carry. The goal? To outmaneuver your opponents through stealthy trades and silent hand gestures while pretending to listen to whoever's speaking, you adjust your posture. Ready, your neighbor slides you a small, flattened wax pebble. You respond with a folded fig leaf from lunch. The exchange is smooth. The game has begun. In this match, there are 3 players in your immediate bench arc: you, your benchmate, clearly a veteran, and a thin man 2 rows back who's already arranged his scroll into a shielded hand signal platform. His fingers twitch like he's playing a harp of deception. The rules are vague, unspoken, and often change mid-game. Historians still argue whether these games evolved from actual strategy simulations or if they were simply invented by senators too clever to sit still for 4 hours. Probably both. You feign interest in Decimus's Fourth River metaphor as your benchmate flicks a grape stem into your lap. That's a challenge token. You respond by placing the fig leaf upside down. A classic counter. This is not a game of luck. It's a game of subtlety. You glance at the senator across the aisle, the one known for inventing his own rules. He once brought in a carved ivory die and claimed it was divine counsel guiding his votes. He lost 9 games that day. Divine or not, his tactics were trash. Meanwhile, Decimus launches into a dramatic pause, allowing you time to analyze the board, such as it is. A ring beside a sandal. A scratched mark in the stone that might be an intentional glyph. You lean forward and pretend to stretch while secretly repositioning your wax pebble next to a sandal strap. Your benchmate raises an eyebrow. Counterplay acknowledged. You have to be careful. Get too into it, and someone might notice. Last week, a junior senator got caught mid-trade and had to pretend he was showing his neighbor a drawing of Jupiter. The punishment? He had to listen to 2 additional speeches as penance. Brutal. Someone coughs behind you. A code signal. Likely announcing a rule shift. Your benchmate grins. He taps once on the bench, twice on his sandal, and subtly places a laurel petal between his fingers. Ah. Now it's a wager round. You offer a tiny bronze clasp. It's old, dull, but shaped like a fish, enough flair to be considered valuable, enough wear to seem humble. He accepts with a curt nod. If you win this round, you get a bite of his candied dates later. If not, well, you're already losing hearing in one ear from Decimus's oratory, so what's a little more suffering? The gameplay continues. Around you, senators are locked in their own silent tournaments, games within games. Some play Senate squares, a variant of tic-tac-toe using olive pits and ink dots. Others engage in quiet word games, like Find the Fallacy, where you score points by mentally cataloging rhetorical nonsense in real time. Someone behind you snorts softly. Likely caught Decimus using the Nile of dishonesty metaphor for the 2nd time. Double points, and yet, despite the secrecy, there's a strange camaraderie in this covert chaos. You're all prisoners of the same marble monument. Finding human warmth in the cold stone walls through shared rebellion, even the guards know. They watch from the edges, eyes technically alert, but you've seen 1 or 2 quietly signal a legal move by shaking their heads almost imperceptibly. You glance down. Your benchmate has placed the fig leaf back on your sandal, curled like a question mark. It's the final move. You counter with a slow exhale and reposition your bronze clasp beside your little wax pebble. Victory. He nods, conceding. A quiet gesture, dignified. You raise an eyebrow, and he reaches into his toga pocket, pulling out 2 small dates. One for you, one for him. The victory is sweet. Literally. Some historians believe that these secret Senate games were actually early prototypes of more formalized Roman pastimes. Others argue they were just harmless distractions. But at least one dusty scroll fragment records a senator bragging about having the highest score on the floor, suggesting that competition was very real. you chew thoughtfully, feeling the sugar perk up your brain just enough to endure Decimus's closing argument, which, mercifully, has begun. Your benchmate leans in. "Same game next week?" he whispers. You nod. "Bring the candied almonds this time." Just as Decimus utters his final line, something about rivers, weeping statues, and fiscal discipline, you flick a grape stem at the senator across the aisle. It bounces off his scroll. He looks up, grins, and flicks one back. The speaker finishes. The chamber offers polite silence, and behind that silence, games played, alliances tested, tiny rebellions won. The games are over, for now. Decimus bows, scroll trembling slightly in his hand. Whether from passion or exhaustion, you'll never know. He steps down, and a low rustle washes over the chamber like wind through tall grass, the collective exhale of senators pretending they were hanging on every word. You stretch discreetly, grateful for the pause. Your knees crack, a sound more dramatic than any part of Decimus's performance. Next up, Lucilla. One of the few female orators occasionally granted space to address the Senate, not as a senator herself, of course, Rome wasn't that forward, but as a specially invited guest to petition on behalf of her family estate. She stands at the base of the chamber now. Hands folded, chin high, her voice is clear. Direct. Surprisingly engaging, and you slump slightly. Not because she's boring, far from it. But because this next phase of the day is where things get complicated, when attention must be paid, not to the speeches, but to the reactions. Lucilla's topic, agricultural reform in Campania. Riveting stuff if you like figs, land boundaries, and legal squabbles over irrigation rights. Which, judging by the way one senator just blinked in slow motion for a full 10 seconds, most don't. But the real game now, watching each other, you glance to your right. A senator 3 benches down is nodding along, brows furrowed, scroll open, quill poised as if taking notes. He is, of course, drawing birds. You know this because you've seen his birds. He once drew an ostrich so lifelike it distracted half a row, 2 benches ahead, a different tactic, the sleep sit. Chin lowered, arms crossed, eyes closed, but not fully. That sliver of eyelid remains open just enough to feign contemplation. To the untrained eye, he's pondering irrigation law. To everyone else, he's deeply asleep. You shift your gaze again and catch someone else's just a second too late. Eye contact, you both freeze, caught in the strange social limbo of shared boredom. Do you nod? Smile? Pretend it didn't happen? You opt for the classic, raise one eyebrow in mock interest and turn away slowly. It's the universal Roman code for, yes, we are dying inside, but with dignity. Lucilla's voice echoes softly now, her words bouncing off stone and into the rafters. You realize she's made a very compelling point about olive tariffs. But at the moment, you're not here for the olives, you're here for the performance. In the Senate, every reaction was a signal. A nod could mean support, or a calculated bluff. A scribble on parchment might be notes. Or a shopping list. Historians still argue whether these nonverbal theatrics had actual political impact, or if they were just social camouflage in an endless sea of speeches. You spot a familiar face near the rear arch, Senator Claudius. Known for a rather theatrical approach. As Lucilla raises her voice for emphasis, he clutches his toga to his chest and murmurs something to his neighbor, eyes wide with manufactured shock. He's not shocked. He's just cultivating drama. Claudius's expressions are legendary. Once, during a budget debate, he feigned fainting, collapsing gently onto a fellow senator's lap. It earned him 2 weeks of whispers, 1 bruised ego, and a lucrative grain contract. You admire the commitment, a new noise drifts through the chamber, soft, steady, repetitive, snoring. You scan the benches. There, behind the left column, a senator with his scroll held upright like a fan, head tilted just enough that the droning rhythm of his nose becomes a metronome. Lucilla pauses slightly, and you imagine she's trying to figure out if it's worth throwing a grape at him. You wouldn't blame her. You smirk, shifting again on your very unergonomic bench. Lucilla continues undeterred, her arguments well-structured and impassioned. But the audience? A swirling tide of semi-alert men in varying states of interest, hunger, and existential regret. Then, something odd. You see two senators, side by side, engaging in a silent clapping ritual. Not real applause, of course. Just tiny taps of fingertips against palm. Almost imperceptible. Their way of signaling approval without creating a sound. This isn't mockery. This is strategy. You lean in. Curious. The tapping escalates slightly, now 3 beats, then pause. It's a code. You realize, they're coordinating a vote response. If Lucilla's petition reaches the consular floor, they're prepping a voting block. This is less about olives and more about which family gains control of a lucrative trade route. Your eyes drift back to Lucilla. She knows this, of course. She's not speaking to the full chamber, she's targeting specific faces. She adjusts her tone slightly when facing Gaius, drops her pitch for Marcus, softens her inflection for the junior senators in the back. It's like watching a musician play multiple instruments without breaking rhythm. You feel yourself relaxing into the flow of it. Not quite sleepy, but certainly soft around the edges. This kind of political ballet has its own strange rhythm, and you begin to understand how senators could spend half their lives inside this echoing chamber without truly going mad. Well, mostly, as Lucilla begins her closing remarks, something about ancestral farms and Roman dignity. A small bird lands on the windowsill behind her. Not a pigeon this time. A sparrow. It tilts its head as if listening, then begins to peck at the stone. The chamber ignores it, but you watch, because somehow, in this moment, the sparrow feels like the only other creature here who isn't pretending. It just exists. Pecking. Breathing. Occasionally fluffing its feathers. You envy it deeply. Lucilla finishes with a nod and steps back. The chamber acknowledges her with a half-hearted shuffle of sandals and a few polite murmurs. Claudius wipes a fake tear from one eye. Another senator offers her a figure, and just like that, it's over. The next speaker prepares their scroll. Another voice, another hour. You adjust your toga, sigh inwardly, and glance at your neighbor. Should we start another round of tessera? He whispers. You smile faintly. Not yet. You want to enjoy this brief moment of stillness, where the only sound is a sparrow tapping stone, and the collective rustle of senators pretending they were paying attention all along. The sparrow flits away. You watch it vanish through the high arch of the window, a sudden flash of freedom against the pale Roman sky. And just like that, the air inside the curia feels heavier again, less like a space and more like a slowly steeping kettle of soporific steam and half-formed thoughts. The next senator is already halfway through unrolling his speech scroll. You didn't catch his name. Probably a Gaius. There are always 3 Gaiuses on the docket, this one's older. His voice, a low gravelly rumble, has that familiar Roman cadence, authoritative, overly rehearsed, and just nasal enough to dry out your brain from the inside. He opens with a philosophical musing on the soul of infrastructure. And you know, instantly, you are in for a long one. Your body responds accordingly, your spine goes soft, your jaw subtly slackens, and your eyes begin the first of what will be many subtle droops. This is nap territory. But not real naps. No one dares sleep outright, not in a chamber where reputations can be undone with a single snore. What you're entering is a liminal space, something the senators have secretly mastered over generations, micronapping. It begins with the gaze. You choose a fixed point, like the chipped marble toe of a statue or the frayed corner of a toga. Something motionless. Something your eyes can blur without suspicion. Next, the breath. Shallow. Rhythmic, just under conscious control. Enough to stay grounded, not enough to remain fully awake. You let yourself drift, and in this haze, the Senate transforms. Gaius drones on about aqueduct maintenance, but his voice is distant now, just another layer of ambient noise, blending with the soft rustling of parchment, the faint coughs from the rear benches, and the distant clink of a guard shifting his spear outside. It becomes a kind of music. Not exciting. Not melodic. But persistent. Soothing in its predictability. You're not quite asleep. Just buffering. A senator to your left slowly opens a scroll, then lets it rest on his lap. His eyes remain closed. You wonder if he's dreaming of Sicily or simply imagining lunch. 2 rows back, someone drops a stylus. It clatters softly, drawing a ripple of awareness. Eyes briefly flicker open, then flutter shut again. No one moves to pick it up. The stylus is dead to us now. There's comfort in the shared drowsiness. A kind of trust. Everyone here understands that staying awake is optional, but appearing awake is mandatory. Historians still argue whether these micronaps made the senators more alert when it counted or if they simply created a class of high-functioning dozers. Regardless, this sleepy ballet is as Roman as togas and disapproving frowns. Your thoughts begin to wander. Not full dreams, but flashes. You're walking through an orchard. The trees are dripping with olives. Somewhere in the distance, someone's arguing about tax rates, but it's muffled by the wind. A goose waddles past with a senatorial seal around its neck. You blink, still in the chamber. Gaius is now quoting Cicero. Of course he is. Every senator thinks quoting Cicero makes their argument ironclad. Never mind that half of them misquote him. You once heard a senator attribute a line about fish sauce to Cicero. No one corrected him. You shift slightly, and your benchmate does the same. It's a delicate dance. Adjust too much and you risk squeaking the bench or jostling someone's scroll. But the minor movements, ankle turns, shoulder drops, slow neck rotations, these are the tools of survival. Another senator sneezes. Not loudly, but with theatrical flourish. A desperate attempt to be acknowledged by the gods, or at least to restart his own attention span. A soft chuckle escapes your lips before you can stop it. Your benchmate smirks, still awake. Technically, Gaius continues. He is now describing a hypothetical future where Rome's roads are smoother than a dolphin's back. You wonder briefly if he's ever seen a dolphin. You doubt it. He strikes you as more of a crushes olives with his bare hands for fun kind of guy, but he's got stamina. You'll give him that. 40 minutes in, and the man hasn't paused for breath longer than 2 seconds. It's impressive. Not enjoyable, but impressive. In the way that watching someone juggle 5 figs while blindfolded is impressive. You don't want to see it, but you can't deny the skill, and then, miracle of miracles, he stumbles, not physically. Verbally, a missed word. A slight stammer. The scroll slips from his grip and rolls forward 2 paces before stopping against the base of the speaker's plinth. The chamber stiffens. Gaius bends to retrieve it, mumbling an apology, and just like that, everyone is alert, not out of respect, out of sheer instinct. The slip-up has broken the trance. Micronaps dissolve. Eyes open. Scrolls lift. It's like someone rang a bell in a barn full of sleepy animals. You feel it too. That odd jolt of wakefulness that only happens when your brain has been stuck in second gear for too long. Gaius resumes, flustered but committed. He begins again, this time from memory. eyes darting as if daring anyone to doubt him, but the moment has passed. The senators are done, they're pretending now, just like before, but now it's different. The veil has been pierced. The illusion of attention has cracked, and everyone's just counting the minutes. You glance at the sunlight filtering through the high windows. You can't tell the time exactly, but you feel it. The subtle shift in the light. The slow march toward afternoon. Lunch is still distant, but it's closer than it was. You press your fingers gently into your temples, pretending to ponder a complex point of infrastructure, while secretly pushing a pressure point that staves off the creeping sleep. Your benchmate yawns, audibly. Bold move. Someone chuckles quietly. Gaius doesn't notice. He is lost in a sea of metaphors now, comparing road repair to moral virtue, aqueduct leaks to the erosion of civic duty. A senator across the aisle murmurs, "Make it stop," into his scroll. You agree silently, but still, you remain, because this is the Senate. And here, boredom is not a glitch, it's a feature. A test of endurance. A rite of passage, and when Gaius finally, winds down, voice rasping, sweat beading beneath his laurel wreath, you almost applaud. Not because it was good, but because it's over. The silence that follows is delicious. You sit with it, and wait, for the next voice. Silence, thick and weighty, hangs in the air like incense, sweet, fragile, almost sacred. No one dares disturb it too quickly. After the verbal marathon you've just endured, the collective body of the Senate appears to sigh in unison. Robes shift, throats are cleared, joints are discreetly cracked, even the pigeons outside seem quieter, as if honoring a brief ceasefire in the war on attention spans. You lean back. Not far, just enough to gently uncage your ribs, to let your spine stretch like an old scroll unrolling. It's the single most luxurious sensation you've felt all morning. Now comes what you affectionately refer to as the lull. The lull isn't a formal part of the schedule. It's just what naturally happens after someone drains the very soul out of the chamber with a 45-minute aqueduct metaphor. It's the moment when even the most power-hungry senators admit, silently, that they too are mortal men who cannot endure another word about civic water flow ethos. And so, for now, there is a pause. A soft, beautiful lull. A few scribes take this opportunity to dip their quills into ink. Not to write anything urgent, but mostly because it's something to do. It makes them look active, purposeful. Awake, you spot a young senator, probably newly appointed, fidgeting with his scroll ribbon. He ties it, unties it, reties it into a bow, then into what looks like a miniature fig. You want to applaud. He's either inventing origami or crying for help in the most Roman way possible. A subtle ripple begins among the older senators. The scrolls shuffle, you recognize the sound, parchment slowly rustling as senators pretend they're preparing for the next speaker, but really they're just unrolling old speeches to look important. And then there's you. Sitting quietly. Watching. This is one of your favorite parts of the day, not because it's interesting, but because it's honest. No one is pretending anymore. For this brief window, even the political theater takes a water break. The senators are just people again. One guy stretches his foot far enough to poke the back of the senator in front of him. The poked senator turns around and scowls, but you catch the micro-smile that follows. A private joke, recycled for the 1000th time. Behind you, someone mutters a limerick under their breath. You can't catch all the words, but it involves a goat, a toga, and what sounds like a plumbing disaster. Delightful. Historians still argue whether these in-between moments, the spontaneous rituals of boredom and camaraderie, held any significance beyond passing time. Some think they strengthened alliances. Others say it was pure survival instinct. Either way, it worked. Someone near the back has opened a satchel of candied pine nuts. You hear the faint crackle of the wrapping, followed by that unmistakable soft clink as one falls and hits the stone floor. Everyone hears it. No one reacts. But now everyone is thinking about pine nuts. You consider asking for one, but no, too forward. Instead, you close your eyes, not to sleep, just to listen. You let the ambient texture of the chamber flood in. A quill scratches quietly, a sandal scuffs against sandstone, a distant cough echoes like a reluctant drumbeat, and the birds return. One flutters past the high window, shadow flickering across the chamber floor. Another settles briefly on the ledge before launching off again. You wonder what they think of all this. Do birds ever feel boredom? Or is that a uniquely human luxury? You're almost relaxed, almost, when the ambient peace breaks. A voice, Conscript Fathers, I rise today not with complaint, but with concern. Oh no, not him, Senator Thaddeus. Tall. Alarmingly enthusiastic. Known for his concerned citizen speeches that inevitably spiral into high-speed soliloquies on everything from street mime permits to the declining quality of mosaic tilework, your neck tightens instinctively, and off he goes. Thaddeus's voice is not soothing. It's pitched like a festival announcer who has consumed too much honeyed wine. He's not loud, per se, but he vibrates. His words come at you like pebbles flung from a catapult. He begins by describing the state of the city's fire brigades, which would be fine, useful, even, except that he insists on reenacting a fictional fire scenario to illustrate his point. Complete with sound effects, you glance sideways and catch your benchmate mouthing "no" in slow motion. It's beautiful. You smirk, even as Thaddeus begins to simulate the panicked gallop of a horse-drawn water wagon. One senator shields his eyes, pretending to be emotionally overwhelmed. Another begins quietly humming to drown him out, and yet, buried beneath Thaddeus's theatrics, he does manage to land on something interesting: the funding system for public safety services. Apparently, the fire brigades are managed privately, staffed by enslaved labor and contracted through wealthy landowners. Historians still debate whether this model actually worked or was simply another symptom of Rome's stubborn resistance to centralized services. You squint. You're almost engaged, and that's when Thaddeus veers wildly into a metaphor involving frogs. Just as frogs leap from lily to lily, so too must Rome leap from outdated policy to civic excellence. Oh no, it's happening. He has entered the metaphor spiral, from frogs to eagles. From eagles to flames. From flames to the hearth. From hearth to family values. And suddenly he's quoting his grandmother. Again, this woman is the secret ghostwriter of half his speeches. You sink slightly in your seat. Not to hide, but to surrender. Thaddeus will not be stopped. He's too fast. Too passionate. Too heavily caffeinated. Though the Roman equivalent is probably fermented date juice and sheer ego. Still, somewhere in the chaos, a pattern emerges. Some senators begin writing notes. Real ones, others nod, not out of courtesy, but with dawning interest. He's making waves. Somehow, amid the frog fire fantasy, he's hinting at a reform proposal that would ruffle several elite feathers. You sit up, because now it's not just a performance. It's politics, and once again, the chamber begins to shift. The air thickens. It's no longer just background noise and sleepy murmurs. Now it pulses with tension, subtle and electric, like the moment just before a gladiator's sword strikes. Thaddeus, undeterred by any subtle cues to wrap up, plunges deeper into his proposals. You notice how his eyes gleam with a rare fire, not the kind that leads to micronaps, but the kind that might stir real debate. You feel a prickling at the back of your neck. The kind you get when things are about to get messy in a way that might not make for pleasant bedtime listening. But hey, you're here for the full experience, right? You glance around. Some senators lean forward, genuinely engaged. Others already pretend to check their nails or gaze absently toward the ceiling. A few glance nervously at each other. The old guard isn't sure how to handle this modern concern. You notice one of the younger senators, barely visible behind a tall scroll, scribbling fiercely. His penwork looks like a combination of notes and doodles of little helmets. You wonder if he's taking this seriously or just passing time the old-fashioned way. The debate edges closer. Suddenly, a hand shoots up. It belongs to a senator famous for his booming voice and even bigger ego, Marcus Lucullus. He's known for interrupting speeches with grand stories about his ancestors and their feats, regardless of the topic. Thaddeus, he booms, voice echoing like a crack of thunder across the chamber. You paint a charming picture with your frogs and flames, but do you not see the folly in mixing poetry with politics? The chamber ripples with murmurs. Some snigger quietly, others suppress sighs. Thaddeus smiles, unbothered, and replies with practiced calm. Marcus, the future of Rome deserves more than dry policy. It needs passion. Even frogs, if you'll forgive the metaphor, can inspire. The two trade barbs, each more ornate than the last. It's like watching a verbal fencing match, sometimes graceful, sometimes downright ridiculous. You lean in. This is the good stuff. Amid their clash, you catch snippets of actual policy proposals buried between the theatrics, calls for improved fire brigade funding. Debate over enslaved labor usage, hints at taxation reforms. Historians still argue whether these exchanges drove real change or were simply political theater designed to maintain the status quo. Your mind drifts momentarily. You picture those frogs again, leaping awkwardly, yet persistently, across a pond of marble columns and toga-clad statesmen. Someone coughs. The moment snaps. The senators begin to murmur among themselves, splitting into factions with quiet nods and careful side glances. The chamber feels alive now, buzzing with a kind of restless energy. You notice a young woman senator, you hardly see them in this role, who quietly raises her hand to speak next. Her voice, when it comes, is soft but steady, cutting through the noise like a calm stream. She calls for moderation and unity, reminding everyone that while reforms are necessary, they must be balanced with respect for Rome's traditions. Her speech has none of Thaddeus's wild metaphorical flourishes, but something about her measured tone demands attention. The chamber listens. Really listens. You can almost hear the grinding gears of change, slow and inevitable. For a moment, the boredom is gone. You sit up straighter, savoring the rare taste of actual engagement. And yet, even as the debate deepens, the Senate remains the Senate. Amid all the passion and politics, there is still that undercurrent of performative boredom, a reminder that every long day in this chamber is also a test of endurance. You settle back, feeling the familiar lull beginning to creep back in, ready to carry you gently toward the next act in this slow, winding story. The soft murmur of voices ebbs and flows like a gentle tide, pulling you along with it. The initial heat of the debate cools just enough to let the comfortable haze settle back in, but not quite into the full fugue of micronaps you know so well. The next speaker stands, a senator with the gravitas of a marble statue but the voice of a man who's just swallowed a goat. He clears his throat, an awkward sound somewhere between a hiccup and a small cough, and begins to read from a scroll so old its edges are nearly translucent. You pay attention, only because this next topic is a classic, grain supply and distribution, the eternal bread and circus's dilemma. A subject so tedious that even ancient Romans joked about it like it was a cure for insomnia. The senator's voice drones on about wheat shipments from Sicily, the taxes imposed on farmers, and the complexities of the Annona system, Rome's food supply network. You can almost hear the collective yawn building among the crowd. But wait, there's a twist. Midway through his speech, he mentions the Lex Fermentaria, a law governing grain subsidies. Historians still argue whether this law actually helped the poor or simply maintained political control by keeping the masses fed just enough to stay quiet. the senator cites a fringe claim that some senators may have secretly profited by diverting grain shipments for personal gain, an early example of what today would be called insider trading. But with wheat, you picture toga-wearing aristocrats sneaking sacks of grain under their cloaks, grinning sheepishly while trying not to spill a single kernel. Meanwhile, the senators seem halfway between listening and rehearsing their own mental grocery lists. You stretch your legs under the bench, careful not to elbow anyone, and glance at the wide windows. The light outside has shifted again, softening to a gentle golden hue. Late afternoon, your eyes wander to a small column of marble, where a faint carving of a laurel wreath catches the sun's rays. You imagine the ancient craftsman who chipped that wreath centuries ago, probably bored out of his mind, humming an off-key tune. There's a quiet rustle beside you. A senator pulls out a folded cloth, smoothing it over his brow. You can almost smell the faint hint of olive oil mixed with sweat and the faintest trace of something herbal, perhaps lavender, a popular scent among the Roman elite to mask less pleasant odors. This minor sensory detail brings a strange comfort, the sameness of human experience across millennia. The desire to feel fresh. The need for relief amid endless formality, and just as you start to drift, a sudden, unexpected sound shatters the drowsiness, a loud sneeze. The sneezer is a portly senator who's been noticeably quiet all morning. His explosive sneeze echoes through the chamber like a sudden clap of thunder. Several heads turn, a few smiles break through the official masks, the sneeze breaks the spell. You feel a jolt, like being lightly shaken awake. It's one of those rare moments where you realize even the most rigid rituals can't contain the unpredictability of the human body. You chuckle softly, but keep your voice low. Better not to attract attention. Someone near the back mumbles, "Bless you," and the chamber's gentle hum resonates. The speech continues, and you find yourself surprisingly engaged. The dry details of grain shipments are painted with hints of human stories, farmers, merchants, hungry families, adding a layer of warmth to the otherwise dull politics. You realize this is the subtle genius of Roman senatorial speeches, beneath the boring surface. There's a pulse of life. Sometimes faint, sometimes strong, but always there if you care to look. Your eyelids flutter but stay open. Outside, a cool breeze stirs the heavy curtains. You breathe it in deeply. The chamber, the senators, the slow march of politics. It all blends into one long, slow rhythm, a rhythm that, despite itself, carries you closer to sleep, and yet keeps you tethered just enough to catch the next phrase, the next metaphor, the next moment of human folly. You settle back into the slow dance of endurance and wait. The chamber's murmurs fade into a gentle undercurrent as another senator rises, his voice carrying a softer, more deliberate tone. You feel the shift immediately. This isn't about policy or fiery speeches, but something quieter, more reflective. It's about the subtle rituals that bind Rome's elite. He speaks of the convivium, the banquet. House senators often pass time not just with speeches but with elaborate dinners, full of food, wine, and conversation. The idea that these social meals were as politically charged as the debates themselves. You imagine the flickering candlelight, the clinking of goblets, and the slow swirl of wine in delicate cups. The soft laughter mingling with the clatter of utensils. Senators reclining on cushions, feeding each other olives, trading jokes that were probably too subtle for the common folk. Historians still argue whether these banquets served as genuine political forums or just as distractions to soften the sharp edges of power. But then comes the quirky bit. You learn that some senators entertain themselves by playing peculiar guessing games with their food. For example, one popular pastime involved blindfolding a guest and feeding them mystery bites, challenging them to identify exotic spices or ingredients. It was a form of sensory torture disguised as entertainment. You smile at the thought of a grizzled senator grimacing as he tries to identify crushed dormice or fermented fish sauce. The senator's voice drifts on, describing the ambient sounds of these banquets, the low murmur of conversation, the occasional burst of laughter, the soft strum of a lyre somewhere in the background. You almost hear it yourself, your mind wanders to the chamber you're sitting in. It's quiet now, but you sense that beneath this stillness lies a hidden liveliness, the undercurrent of human connection that powers all these rituals. You feel the weight of time, a slow, steady pulse, like the heartbeat beneath Rome's sprawling, marble surface. A subtle scent of rosemary wafts through the air, faint but unmistakable. Someone has brought herbs to the chamber, perhaps to mask the tiredness or simply out of habit. You notice a young senator gently tapping a rhythmic pattern on the stone with his fingers, almost like a metronome keeping time with the slow passing hours. You tap back, almost imperceptibly. It's a small game, but it helps. Suddenly, a loud chuckle erupts from across the room. It's unexpected, a break in the monotony. A senator has just recounted an old joke involving a senator, a slave, and a rather confused goose. You grin, recognizing that even in this world of endless formality, moments of genuine humor bloom like wildflowers in a Roman garden. As the laughter fades, the conversation resumes, softer now, more thoughtful. You catch fragments of philosophical debates, questions about virtue, duty, and the ideal life. You think about how these ancient men, trapped between the demands of power and the tedium of procedure, found ways to keep their minds sharp and spirits alive. The chamber feels less like a prison and more like a vast, living organism, breathing, shifting, enduring, and you, seated quietly within it, are a small part of this endless dance. The weight of sleep presses again, gentler this time. Like a soft cloak being draped over your shoulders, you close your eyes. Briefly, savoring the peace, but just before you drift off, a faint whisper brushes past, someone quoting a line from Cicero about the fleeting nature of power and the eternal rhythm of the Republic. It's a perfect note to linger on, and with that, you sink deeper into the slow, soothing hum of history's long, slow march. You wake slowly from that brief reverie, the hum of the Senate's chamber settling like a soft fog around you. The voices have quieted to a gentle murmur, like distant waves brushing against the shore, and for a moment you're adrift in the timelessness of it all. The next senator rises, a man known for his dry wit and penchant for quoting ancient poets at the most unexpected moments. He begins by describing the architecture of the Senate House itself, the curving marble benches, the towering columns, and the open roof that lets in the ever-changing sky. You picture the play of sunlight on polished stone, the shadows shifting as clouds drift lazily overhead. The sound of wind fretting through the open spaces, carrying with it the faint scent of olive groves and distant market stalls. He tells how senators would sometimes pass the long hours by observing the natural world, a kind of ambient pastime, like modern people watching the flicker of a fireplace or the rain against a window. You imagine these men, draped in togas, their faces lined with the careworn marks of politics and power, staring quietly at a single leaf twisting in a breeze, or a sparrow hopping along the marble floor. Historians still argue whether these moments of silent observation were simple boredom or something closer to meditation, an ancient form of mindfulness born of the endless speeches. Then comes a curious detail. Some senators were rumored to keep small collections of curiosities, tiny shells, fragments of colorful glass, even rare feathers, that they would finger absently during sessions to maintain focus or stave off sleep. You smile at the mental image of a senator delicately rolling a bright blue feather between thumb and forefinger while a colleague drones on about tariffs. Outside, the chamber's atmosphere shifts subtly. You hear the faintest clinking, the ring of a bronze bracelet or the soft jingle of a purse. A few senators shift their seats, settling deeper into the slow pulse of the afternoon. One senator, feeling the weight of time pressing on him, breaks the quiet by softly humming a tune, something simple, repetitive, like a lullaby passed down through generations. You find yourself tapping your foot along with the rhythm, drawn into the shared human need for comfort amidst tedium. The humming spreads quietly, like a secret chorus, and you feel the chamber's tension soften. The conversation begins anew, now weaving between policy and poetry, duty and desire. One senator quotes Virgil, drawing parallels between the cycles of nature and the rise and fall of empires. You listen closely, catching the gentle melancholy in the verse, the sense that even great Rome is subject to time's slow erosion. It's strangely soothing. A faint breeze stirs the papers on the benches, lifting a single leaf-shaped scroll corner. You reach out to steady it, your fingers brushing the rough texture of papyrus, reminding you how tactile and fragile history can be. You think back to the sneezing senator, the frog metaphors, the quiet tapping of fingers, the small moments that make this ancient chamber feel alive, real, and deeply human. And as the light outside softens further, slipping toward evening, you realize that the slow, deliberate rhythm of these sessions, boring though they may be, is a kind of endurance, a ritualized patience that has kept Rome's heart beating through centuries. You lean back once more, the ambient sounds washing over you like a gentle tide. Your eyelids grow heavy, but your mind stays just alert enough to appreciate the quiet beauty of this ancient ritual. The Senate has settled into its long, slow breath, and you, too, feel yourself carried along on its steady pulse. The golden hues of the late afternoon deepen, filtering through the Senate's open roof and casting long shadows across the marble floor. The murmurs have dwindled, replaced by a calm so complete it almost feels like the chamber is holding its breath. You settle deeper into your seat, the cool stone pressing against your legs, grounding you in this ancient place suspended in time. A new senator stands, known more for his sharp intellect than oratory skill. His voice is quieter, almost hesitant at first, but with an undercurrent of earnestness that commands your attention despite the soft cadence. He begins to speak about time itself, not the political kind, but the philosophical. How the Romans conceived of tempest as both fleeting and cyclical, a concept that shaped their laws, their rituals, and even their approach to speeches. You feel the chamber's atmosphere thicken, the abstract turning into something almost palpable. The senator describes how long speeches were, in part, a test of patience and endurance, a ritual that reaffirmed the Senate's control not just over Rome but over time itself. Historians still argue whether this endurance was a deliberate political tool or simply a byproduct of the oratory culture that prized verbosity. You picture senators sitting through hours of monotonous declamation, their minds wandering like lazy rivers, seeking small islands of distraction. There's a quirky aside. Some senators supposedly practiced subtle hand gestures and facial expressions, micro-movements, to signal boredom or dissent without breaking decorum. Like an ancient version of the subtle eye roll or the barely perceptible sigh, you smile at the thought of a Roman senator skillfully disguising a yawn behind a perfectly timed cough. The speaker's voice softens as he reflects on the paradox of this endurance, that in surviving these long, boring speeches, senators not only passed time but demonstrated their fitness for leadership. It was as if to say, if I can withstand this, I can withstand the burdens of the Republic. You glance around, noticing how a few senators subtly adjust their togas, stretch their necks, or shift their weight, small, human ways to cope with the endless flow of words. Outside, a breeze picks up, ruffling the edges of parchments and lifting stray hairs from foreheads. You smell the faint tang of dust mixed with old parchment and a trace of pine resin from the wooden doors. Your mind drifts for a moment to how different this is from modern politics, with its rapid-fire debates and constant media buzz. Here, time moves slowly, deliberately, like a great river carving its course over centuries. You catch the senator quoting from Seneca, who once advised that true happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. The chamber falls silent as those words hang in the air. It's a rare moment of stillness, a collective exhale. You feel the tension ease, the weight of hours slowly melting away. You sink further into the soft rhythm of this ancient world. The room's ambient noises, the soft rustle of robes, the occasional cough, the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer, blend into a gentle lullaby. And as the day edges toward twilight, you find yourself drifting, carried by the slow, steady pulse of Rome's eternal endurance. Twilight deepens its gentle hues, and the chamber seems to exhale with the day's waning light. The murmurs have thinned to near silence, a soft hum barely audible beneath the occasional shuffle of sandals or rustle of togas. a new voice rises, older, steadier, rich with decades of experience. The senator speaks not of policy or philosophy, but of the small rituals that filled the spaces between speeches, the notes scribbled on wax tablets, the secret exchanges of messages through subtle gestures, the discreet passing of water or bread to stave off hunger and thirst. You imagine the delicate dance of glances and nods, the silent conversations layered beneath the official discourse. It's a world of coded signals, where boredom breeds creativity. Historians still debate how much these informal interactions shaped the Senate's decisions compared to the formal speeches themselves. You smile, picturing a senator deftly slipping a note across the marble bench under the watchful gaze of a colleague, or the subtle clinking of cups shared in quiet camaraderie. The senator describes how some used fidgeting as a mental tool, twirling rings, tapping fingers, or even spinning small stones, to maintain focus through the long hours. You recall the feather from an earlier section and imagine a similar object passed hand to hand, a talisman against the creeping dullness. A sudden whisper rises, a clever quip about the famous orator Cicero's tendency to fall asleep mid-speech, only to awaken with a start and continue as if nothing had happened. The chamber chuckles softly, breaking the spell of solemnity. You feel the warmth of human imperfection seeping through the marble walls. Outside, the first stars appear, faint pinpricks against the deepening blue sky visible through the Senate's open roof. The evening air carries a hint of jasmine and damp earth. Grounding you in the moment, the senator's voice lowers, sharing a lesser-known tradition. At the end of long sessions, some senators would walk to the nearby Temple of Saturn, performing a quiet ritual to cleanse the mind and spirit from the day's burdens. You imagine the soft footsteps echoing on worn stone, the flicker of torches casting dancing shadows on ancient statues. This moment of ritual closure, though unofficial, helped the senators transition from the weighty affairs of state to the calm of night. You feel a gentle pull toward rest yourself, the soothing cadence of the chamber and the stories intertwining to form a lullaby of history. The senator's voice fades as he closes his reflections, the chamber's ambient sound swelling. Once more, the soft tapping of a lyre, the distant murmur of a flowing fountain, the rustle of leaves stirred by a night breeze. You breathe deeply, the cool air filling your lungs, steadying your heart. The ancient Senate, with all its grandiosity and tedium, seems almost alive, a living archive of human patience, folly, and endurance. And you, cocooned within this space, feel the slow descent into calm. Your thoughts grow lighter, drifting with the twilight shadows. The day's long journey nears its quiet conclusion, and in that peaceful fading, you find comfort. Night has fully embraced the city by now, and the Senate chamber feels wrapped in a velvet stillness. The last whispers of conversation have softened into near silence, replaced by the subtle, rhythmic breathing of a room at rest. You feel the final traces of alertness slipping away, leaving only a gentle, calm awareness. The lone senator rises, his voice a soft murmur against the deep quiet. He reflects on the endless cycle of days spent in this chamber, the unchanging rituals that mark the passing of time, speeches that test patience, glances that speak volumes, the slow dance of endurance shared by all who have come before and will come after. He muses on the paradox of boredom, how something so tedious can forge bonds of resilience, shape character, and ultimately, influence the fate of an empire. Historians still debate the true power of these long speeches. Were they mere endurance trials, or subtle tools of control and persuasion? Either way, they left a mark deeper than any sword or law. You imagine the senators rising one by one, filing out beneath the open sky now studded with stars, the marble floor cool beneath their sandals, the air crisp and fragrant with night-blooming flowers. The senator shares a quirky detail. Some senators reportedly carried small tokens, pressed flowers, carved figurines, or favorite coins, as reminders of home, family, or moments of peace amid the endless political grind. It strikes you how universal this is, this yearning for comfort and connection in the face of monotony. Outside the chamber, the city hums softly, the distant bark of dogs, the faint splash of water from the Tiber River, the murmur of a late-night vendor packing up stalls. You breathe in the night air, feeling the coolness soothe your skin, the calm wrapping around you like a soft blanket. Your eyelids grow heavier still, the slow pulse of history's heartbeat syncing with your own, as you lean back. The final echoes of the day's speeches dissolve into silence. You feel a quiet gratitude for the strange beauty hidden within the dull and the tedious, the slow rhythms that shape human life across the ages. The Senate's chamber fades into shadow, but the stories linger, soft and warm like embers glowing in the dark, and you drift, carried on the gentle current of time, toward rest. The slow, steady pulse of Rome's endless endurance carries you home. Now, as the night deepens and the world outside slips into a quiet hush, you find yourself gently cradled by the stillness that surrounds you. The day's weight lifts from your shoulders, replaced by a soft calm that spreads like twilight across your mind. The endless speeches, the tapping fingers, the subtle glances, all dissolve into a slow, soothing rhythm that matches your own breath. You feel the cool marble beneath you fade into a distant memory, replaced by the softness of a feather-light breeze brushing against your skin. The distant murmur of the city, once sharp and insistent, now hums like a lullaby, wrapping you in its tender embrace. Each moment stretches lazily, unhurried and serene, as if time itself is taking a gentle breath. Allow your thoughts to drift like autumn leaves floating downstream, carried by the quiet current of history's long, patient flow. There is no rush here, no demand for attention, only the soft cadence of an ancient world winding down. Imagine the senators' murmurs fading into the night, their figures dissolving into shadows, leaving behind only the echo of endurance, patience, and quiet resilience. Feel your body sink deeper into comfort, your eyelids growing heavier with every slow blink. The pulse of Rome's eternal rhythm slows alongside your heartbeat, and you are carried on a calm tide, far from the noise and hurry of today. Rest now, wrapped in the warmth of this gentle past, safe within the endless night. Tomorrow waits, but for now, you are here, still, peaceful, and softly drifting into dreams, sweet dreams.